Hey, how's it going, universe? Shaun here from Zoobox. Got another movie review today. Today we're going to be talking about 2017's Ghost in the Shell, the American Hollywood, I think it looks like Chinese co-financed adaptation of the anime and manga of the same name. That's right, it stars Scarlett Johansson, Pilu Asbeck, Takashi Kitano, or Beat Takashi if you're a Yakuza fan, Michael Pitt, Julia Binoche, and a whole host of other people. It's directed by Rupert Sanders. This was his follow up to Snow White and the Huntsman, a movie I've never actually watched. I think I've seen parts of it. Never really did much for me, so I just kind of skipped it. The IMDb plot synopsis is: in the near future, Major Mira Killian is the first of her kind, a human saved from a terrible crash, who is cyber enhanced to be a perfect soldier devoted to stopping the world's most dangerous criminals. And that's a log line there. That's an elevator pitch. Just like in classic IMDb fashion, kind of doesn't tell you anything about the movie. And that's okay. I've always kind of stuck up for this movie. I'm a moderate Ghost in the Shell fan. I was excited when I heard about the adaptation. I was even excited when I heard that Scarlett Johansson was cast as the Major, because it makes sense. I mean, granted, we'll talk about maybe the controversy surrounding, or the faux controversy, the non-controversy, the made-up controversy surrounding the film that kind of did it in. Critics really were harsh on this movie. Overly harsh. It doesn't seem like a lot of them were very familiar with the source material, which, in fairness, I don't know. Is it the kind of movie that you need to know in detail what the references are to appreciate? I mean, that's possible. But I think it actually encapsulates the spirit of Ghost in the Shell, no pun intended, pretty well. It is a kind of a mishmash, a hodgepodge of everything Ghost in the Shell, from the manga to the movies to the television series. It kind of just is pulling all these little elements from each of them. But the core story, though, is pretty much the same. You know, it deals with identity and transhumanism and what it means to be alive and what it means to have a purpose in life. What is identity? What does it mean? Where do we get it from? Is it memories? Is it life experience? Is it the actions that we actually take in the present? Is that what makes a person a person? And what is a person? And is there value in the human experience over kind of this artificial experience that these new beings basically are experiencing? What is the thing? Is it, are they evolution? It's kind of got this the subtext about kind of how, like, rich people, I guess, or rich corporations and whatnot, trying to live forever, trying to find kind of the fountain of youth, and maybe they found it through this process of putting people's bones into cyber enhanced bodies, or into cyborgs. Is that kind of the way forward for eternal life? It gets into a little bit of that, and just like the anime does, it's like I said, if you're a fan of the anime, I would be really surprised if you hated this movie. I can understand maybe just preferring the anime over it. I get that. I would say that the anime is broadly more successful than the movie is. The movie has just movie issues. It's got some pacing issues. But overall, I think it's a pretty good movie. I was pleasantly surprised when I watched it. It had been a while since I'd watched it last, and I was pleasantly surprised, especially just after having watched the original anime from '95. I thought it did a pretty good job, and it is interested in doing more than just be like a remake of that. It's trying to expand upon things. Granted, it does it in a really heavy-handed way. Basically, they take the subtext of Ghost in the Shell and they just made a story about the subtext. So there isn't really subtext because they just say it. They just speak it out loud. All the characters talk about it. And they beat you over the head with it from the get-go, from the beginning of the movie. The conversation is started, and that's Scarlett Johansson's the Major. That's her character's entire arc. She's the only one who has real definition, I would say, and maybe that's a flaw in the movie, because there's a lot of other interesting characters, like her partner Bato, played by the Danish actor Pilu Asbeck, who's fantastic. He does a great Bato. And it would have been nice maybe to get into more of their dynamic as partners and the kind of juxtaposition between somebody just starting to be cyber enhanced and somebody that is almost completely cybernetic. They don't really get into that stuff at all. It is more exclusively about the Major and her story and her journey. I think Scarlett Johansson was like I said, I think she was a great choice for the Major. She makes a choice as an actress, as a performer, that some are going to read as too subtle, or she downplays everything. But if you really put into the context of not just the fact that she's a robot, she's a confused cyber enhanced person that is just trying to figure out what it means to even exist and what her life is. If you watch the old anime, pretty expressionless character, a very straightforward character. So it is totally in line with what came before. And the stuff about this movie that actually the most impressive stuff is the visual design. It's the production design. It's the attention to detail. It really faithfully recreates the world of Ghost in the Shell. In the best big budget way sense, in a way only Hollywood could do it. And it's got a big budget. I think it was 150 million to make this movie, but it's not quite Marvel movie money. Well, what they do now, Marvel movie does now, or Disney movie money. And they made good use of that budget. It looks fucking awesome. It's awe inspiring. It's every single frame is beautiful, and especially when they go into some scenes where they pull from the animes, they directly recreate them almost shot for shot, and they do a great job. Granted, the context is a little different. They've recontextualized it to fit the story that they're telling, but it's just cool as a fan. It was just cool to see some of that stuff come to life, and their attention to detail was much appreciated by me. I thought it was really, really cool. It's got a cool ass look, man. It's probably one of the most well-realized cyberpunk universes in a movie that I've seen since maybe Blade Runner, honestly. And you can tell that the manga, even the manga, kind of probably pulled a lot from Blade Runner, because that's the weird thing about anime in general. It pulls a lot from Western influence. They watch a lot of American movies, and it definitely comes through in their work, especially the science fiction stuff. Everybody's really good. Like I said, I really like Scarlett Johansson. Michael Pitt as Kuze, the main antagonist of the movie, who is kind of a stand-in for the Puppet Master, or the Laughing Man, I guess, if you're familiar with the animes. He's really good. He's really good. I think, they did a very Hollywood thing because they needed to have more connections between the characters. So, the Major and Kuze have this deeper connection where they're actually deeply connected in a personal way. And that's part of the journey. That's part of the discovery that happens as the movie goes on. And once you get into the third act, all that stuff becomes explicitly clear. And it all plays into this idea, like what I talked about when I was talking about the anime rather. This idea of tribalism, fitting in, feeling like you're part of a family. So they kind of connect that, and on a deeper level than just the fact that they're cyborgs. They're not. It's not because of that makes them a family. There's a deeper human element to it. So they kind of go back into a more humanistic paradigm, because in the anime it's much more clinical. It's much colder. It's much more about artificial intelligence. This one is about humanity, the ghost in the shell. Explicitly, it doesn't really get into the artificial intelligence stuff at all. It's more about the human journey and what that means on a philosophical level. Like I said, it does beat you over the fucking head with it. It is a Hollywood movie. Make no mistake. It is made for the widest possible audience, and they want to make sure you understand what is going on. Although what sets it apart from a lot of these big budget tentpole things is that it feels like a movie. It doesn't feel like a ride. It doesn't feel like an amusement park ride, to quote old Marty Scorsese. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like a movie. There is no huge action set pieces, save for maybe the end, but even that's not like, it's not crazy. It's a much more personal story than you would probably imagine, just thinking about genre stuff in the modern era. It's a much more grounded, much more down to earth story than a lot of things you see, a lot of superhero movies and whatnot. So it doesn't feel like they were just trying to make a dumb action movie. They were actually trying to do something that was maybe a little bit deeper, but they want you to understand it. They want you to understand it. They do not want you to be confused about where her character ends up at the end of the movie. And I can appreciate that on some level. I can understand that. I don't like having my hand held through these things. And just explicitly explained to you. I mean, literally, Scarlett Johansson has like voiceover in the final moments of the movie where she just explains what happened. She just explains the emotional arc of the character, and you know exactly how she feels. It didn't do super well, so we're probably not going to get a sequel, which is unfortunate. I wish this was a franchise. I could have seen this. I could see a Ghost in the Shell trilogy. That would be cool. And to just circle back to the controversy stuff, what actually buried this movie? That's what buried the movie. I think it was tracking really well up until a month before it came out, a month and a half or so, because of the Scarlett Johansson casting. I mean, holy shit. I mean, just on a practical level, why wouldn't you put one of the biggest genre actresses on the planet? Not just in America, on the planet, as the star of your movie. If it wasn't for Scarlett Johansson, this movie probably wouldn't exist. That's the real kicker. They had what's her name? Constance Wu got her little 5 minutes of woke fame for excoriating the film and saying that we don't need white people to tell Asian stories. I mean, she's Taiwanese, and this is a side tangent, but Constance Wu is from her family, her heritage is Taiwanese. She's actually just from fucking Virginia, but her heritage is Taiwanese, and she plays a Korean woman on television. And then people thought that she should play a Japanese woman in Ghost in the Shell, because you had all these fucking stupid woke critics, pundits, panel people, the collider types. You know what I'm saying? They were all like, "Oh, it'd be great if Constance Wu took over the role, or she had played the role." It's like, why? Isn't that just as racist? Does everybody look the same to you guys? Jesus fucking Christ! It sucked. It sucks that became the focus of the movie. And the great irony is, once you see the movie, the fact that they cast Scarlett Johansson is baked into the story. Because of being about identity and what matters and what makes you a person and what is your ghost. Are you more than just your physical presence? That is part of the story. And the story, it's a little bit of a spoiler here, the story nods to that. Once you find out that this corporation had been doing experiments and she wasn't really a car crash victim that they saved. She was kind of like this, I guess, like a troglodyte revolutionary type. Her and the orphan kids, the kids that ran away from home, and they decided to go fight the system and fight the oncoming technologies. That she was a Japanese woman, and her name is the same name of the character. And I'm blanking. Madoko. Her name was the character that was in the original anime and manga, and that she's actually a Japanese woman. She has a Japanese woman's brain, and that's the whole point of the fucking movie. And also, the idea that what they've done in this new, I guess, is it Tokyo? I think it takes place in like a futuristic Tokyo. I could be wrong about that, so I apologize. But it's like a multinational, multi-ethnic cast, and the way that the country is set up is that it's kind of become completely globalized. So there's white people, there's Japanese people, there's Chinese people, there's black people, and the British people, Americans, and they all live and work together in this city. So the entire, like, the context for it all is much different than what we actually experience in the world. And also just the fact that, like, anime characters are pretty Western influenced, especially in the 80s and 90s. Even the animators back in the day, I've read some interviews and stuff. That's why they don't look specifically Japanese. This is the difference between sort of the science fiction anime or the action animes of that era and something like that comes out of Studio Ghibli, or Ghibli rather. Those are explicitly Japanese stories, and their characters look explicitly Japanese. Most anime doesn't. They're kind of it's a much broader thing. It's almost like Alita Battle Angel also almost had a small controversy. They almost went after them because they made Alita's eyes look like anime eyes. But the actress is Mexican, I believe. Rose Salazar, is that her name? Sure. But so they almost went after them for that. It's just anything that is at all deals with any of these subjects or crossing over. As soon as people hear a word, you're not even just allowed to talk about anything anymore, even in a respectful manner. Does anybody really think that these people were trying to whitewash a story? Do you think that was the intention? But no, if you don't shut up and listen and fall in line with predetermined modes of behavior and say the right things, people just will try to tear you apart. It's sad. It's a sad state of affairs for the world, but it's also just a really sad state of affairs for art. I mean, I love art. I love literature. I love movies. I don't want shit made by committee so people can feel better about themselves when they buy a ticket. It's fucking insane. They want to make every act virtuous. It's fucking crazy. You can't separate out your entertainment from your fucking moral system and your life. It's crazy. And, because movies, they provide us a safe space to explore the darker parts of our humanity, to experience things we might not otherwise experience. So it's important to maintain that integrity. And this was just another example of people just writing something off because of reflexiveness. This is the problem with modern film criticism at large. It's completely reactionary, completely reflexive, completely... Their opinions are completely dependent on whether or not the movie supports their worldview. It's really strange. And it's most disappointing in the genre communities because now we just have people propping up actual mediocre to bad movies because they agree with the message. So what is that going to do for the fucking art form? There are plenty of great storytellers who tell nuanced stories full of rich subtext and interesting ideas and that are progressive, that are not progressive, and that should be okay. And those people don't get the fucking time of day. But if you make a movie that's just overtly about a subject that you personally feel is important, they'll just support it whether it's good or not. A good example recently, a few months ago, was Black Christmas. The remake of Black Christmas was embroiled in some sort of manufactured controversy because somebody thought the way they marketed the movie was stupid. It's fucking crazy. But anyways, I just went on a little rant there. Ghost in the Shell 2017, worth checking out. Even if you're not a fan of the anime, I think is just a sci-fi fan. It's cool. It's cool that something like this got made. Rupert Sanders, he's not a great director from what I can tell. He is not the thing that makes this buzz or this work. And granted, I'm not trying to overhype this movie either. It has some problems. It's not going to be for everybody. I think some people are just going to find it boring. In the same way that I think a lot of people would find the anime boring. It's maybe a little overly ponderous and really gets redundant by the end because it just goes over the same. They want to make sure that you understand what is happening. And that's just a flaw of this kind of level of filmmaking, the big budget filmmaking, because they want everybody to walk away understanding what happened. So, it's just weird. These niche movies the audiences are not responding to them. Even ones that are critically acclaimed that don't get buried. I'm worried about Denis Villeneuve, his Dune movie. I don't know if people are going to go see Dune. That movie costs a ton of fucking money. Nobody went to see Blade Runner 2049, and that was a very well-reviewed movie. A very, 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 very much the critical community came out in support of that, constantly talking about it. And that bombed. That was a big bomb. So I think these niche things just don't have the wide reach just on a conceptual level, or they're banking too much on name recognition, kind of not realizing that the fact that like anime or sci-fi fans are a niche are actually a niche community, but they just talk a lot. They just have loud voices. So from a business angle, I don't know what's going to happen in the future with this stuff. And it just sucks that, like, because of all the controversy with Ghost in the Shell, we're just going to get even more vanilla, uninteresting swipes and attempts at this shit so people can feel like they've done something virtuous. The new secular religion. And I say that as a secular person, but to see what goes on, holy shit. Holy shit. I had intentions at one point in my life. I wanted to write about movies as well as make movies, but I wanted to write about movies, and I was making some headway. I had a blog. I wrote for a few outlets a couple times, freelance. And the toxic, gross nature of the community just completely turned me off. Just so hard. I just wanted nothing to do. I just don't want my name attached to that shit. I don't know. Maybe that was a mistake on my part. Maybe I should have just kept going and to be one of the good ones. But I guess that's what I'm trying to do now, right? Not to say that I'm a great critic. I'm not a professional critic or whatever, but I'm an okay writer. So, not that you were exposed to that, but yeah. So that's going to do it for me today. I would definitely recommend Ghost in the Shell if you've never seen it, and I think it's worth your time. I think it's a good representation of what Ghost in the Shell is and what it's about and what it means. So yeah. There, take that, critics from 2017, you fucking feckless fucks. All right, everybody, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. If you would like to know all about Zoobox, you want to keep up to date with us, check us out on Instagram, Facebook. I have my personal Twitter. All the links are in the bio. And if you have anything you would like me to talk about in these daily videos, a movie or music, whatever, I'll look into it, and maybe it'll happen. You never know. So just drop a comment in the comment section, and we'll see what we can do. All right, everybody. Have a good one.